we could put it up there for everybody. So,
throw it in the chat.
hola, ¿cómo estás?
Nice. We're multilingual.
There we go.
Multilingual. Siniste Mysterios.
Yeah. That's all I got right now. I'll try to work on that little part there. Sorry.
Joe Redmiles asks, episode 51, as in Area 51, as in the 51st episode. You know, Craig, today was 12/12/24. And I thought this morning, someone's going to try to make something out of this. And sure enough, in my social media, several hours later, someone's like, 12 plus 12 is 24. And very good.
Yeah, I know. Then 2 plus 4 is 6. And then a little sidetrack there. That's why I've, some people, throw the shade at me all you want to, people. That's part of the reason why I've always had a hard time with the whole numerology thing. Right. Because Jim Carrey, his movie was the perfect one about that. Is you could pretty much steer numbers to work in any way that you need them to. And so while there are some that are like really coincident, it's like there's some cool things, but man, when you get some people that are just like in this, and then when you add this and this and this equals this, then that's how we know it's Trinity. And it is, and this is mocking of the Trinity, and it's of the, and I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, I know. It was a random date that we held the show.
Yeah, it is indeed.
That's all.
The 51st episode, which is, man, we started with MK Ultra, Voynich manuscript. Yep. I think we're the first two, and here we are 51 with a snazzy intro and a snazzy outro. Good evening to Ron, to Joe again, to Harlan. Hello, Tanya. Thank you glad you could be here with us tonight, because this is a truly sinister mystery, although it doesn't kind of seem like it. At first, it seems like the idiotic move of all time. But Craig, I think I have some cool context and some neat things. And so you want to dive on in?
Yeah, well, yeah, and that's we'll get into it, because that's one of those things too. It's like, as I was doing some of the research on this thing, it's a lot of people, I almost did like thing. It's like Reagan's folly or cutting edge tech, type thing, because that's what a lot of people pose this thing. But it's almost, since we've done shows on Kissinger, we've talked about these things. You could easily make the case that this was done, that there wasn't really so much as a plan of like, hey, whether or not we're going to succeed. It was one of the outcomes that, if we did this, it could potentially do a geopolitical pressure. And that's as we'll get, and so that's one of those things where a lot of people are just real apt to, sorry, my hat keeps bothering me, keeps shifting. A lot of people just want to keep pawning it off. It's like, it's just, Reagan, it's something that wasn't going to work. I'm like, yeah, but when you dig into it, it's kind of, it's almost kind of the way Trump made, Space Force. Mm-hmm. It was kind of a way, it was like, everybody's laughing at it. I'm like, yeah, but it was kind of a way of disclosing without disclosing.
Well, that is part of it. So this is very much a matrushka. A matrushka being the Russian nesting dolls, which matrushka sounds so much nicer, comrade. But that's really what this is. And so to start us off, I'm going to go back. This was announced actually by Reagan on TV, a live telecast. Like, presidents don't do that much anymore. March 23rd, 1983. But the prior June, Steven Spielberg screened the movie E.T. for Reagan at the White House. And there were astronauts there and a lot of important people and insiders. At the end of the movie, Reagan stands up, and of course, everyone has enjoyed it. And he says that 6 people in the room, which is oddly specific, know the film was absolutely real. And since that time, Steven Spielberg has said it was obviously a joke. But I went back and listened to an early radio interview with him, and he said Reagan did not smile. He didn't present it as a joke. He just simply said, there are 6 people in this room that know that this is absolutely real. So I find that interesting. And then Reagan addressed, which I've talked about before and quoted, the UN. But so who were some of the people who were involved? Caspar Weinberger, who was the Secretary of Defense, was a major proponent of this thing. But then, Craig, and I'm going to come back to him later, but Edward Teller was the one who really pushed this. Now, Edward Teller was the father of the hydrogen bomb. and he was a big proponent of X-ray laser research. So he brings Reagan out to Lawrence Livermore National Laboratory to his office to discuss SDI. And when I talk about later who Edward Teller really is, it adds another. This is just like layers, man. This is
Oh yeah,
terrible.
this is an onion.
Tiramisu. I love it. So where did the name so the official name of this thing was the Strategic Defense Initiative. Very, very serious, very Harvard, Yale, Stanford scientists, Strategic Defense Initiative. But Senator Ted Kennedy addressed the Senate shortly after Reagan's announcement, and he called it a reckless Star Wars scheme. So many, many people know this as
Star Wars.
Yeah, media ran it. Reagan administration absolutely hated it. Carl Sagan hated the idea of this. Certain members of Congress hated it because it was about the weaponization of space, which is, Craig, still today, my understanding is there's like a huge like cosmic junkyard out in space of like, old booster rockets and shit. And space is very messy. And some people really don't want to, I think for good reasons. Yeah, Charles Smart is always one step ahead of us, Charles. Bring on the brilliant pebbles. We'll get there, my friend. So the tech was mostly infeasible. It was really pie in the sky kind of stuff, where it was like decades away from actualization. Or, like Craig alluded to, was it? Or did they know exactly what they were doing?
Yeah, because I almost liken it to the way Kennedy, he kicked it off and say, we don't do these things because they're easy. We do these things because they're hard. And like where it was one of those where it's like the guys are telling him, sir, we can't do this. We are going to do, just you throw the, it's like the typical thing, like the Dilbert comics where marketing is always throwing these things out there and it's up to engineering and everybody to figure out. I was like, oh crap, now we got to figure out how to do it, and that's what this seemed like. That's the way Kennedy did. This is like Reagan's moment of this is our goal, but he did it on a public scale to where now we're like, oh crap, now we got to put at least something up there.
Right. And I love it because it hits numerous boxes, and it kind of parallels Reagan. There's that famous and I think Phil Hartman played him. Was Reagan really this doddery old pre-Alzheimer's dude, or was he a cagey actor who was deeply in control the whole time? Because there were reports, not unlike Biden, that he would fall asleep in meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And do you remember the old Phil Hartman bit where like the Girl Scouts come in and he's like, "Oh, hello, little girl. It's so nice to see you." And she goes out and he's like, "We got to kick the Russians' ass like yesterday, people."
Yeah, it's those type of, because I mean, you could see it, especially when he actually afterwards, he came down with it. I mean, I think it's probably at that time he was probably showing some early signs, in that last term. But yeah, no, I that's one of the biggest things. It's like what you allude to with the thing. Was that a act that he put out? There's 6, just to kind of throw people off the trail, or was that a moment where he was being deadpan serious? No, there's 6 people in this room that know this is true.
And we know when he was governor, not unlike, Carter, he saw a UFO. He seemed to have been a believer. So what was this SDI, this Star Wars, really about? Well, some of the problems was that it destabilized nuclear deterrence. Not only are we going to create nuclear weapons, but we're going to put them in space. And Craig has the banner up here, and we're covering it, but it was a shield, and that's what the US would say. It's a shield. It's not a sword. It's a defense initiative, hence the D, right? But it did seriously heighten tensions with the Soviet Union, and it forced them to increase defense spending. Now that's what killed the Soviet Union. The United States just, oh wow, I just shifted dimensions or something.
Yeah, well, that's kind of what you're just saying, and that thing was this intentional to make this to where, well, we know this is not feasible for us, but the Russians are going to be so focused on making sure that they can beat this system that they're going to overspend, and that's kind of, in a way, it's kind of what's happening now with Russia with their hypersonic technology. So is that something like this is going to be, it may or may not actually physically like work like they're saying, but you're going to make everybody on the West put all this effort and resources into combating something that isn't there. I mean, it's kind of like little deviations, like what's going on right now in New Jersey.
Yeah.
With the drones, is there something, everybody's going to be so focused on this throwing stuff at this where you don't know what it is, but we got to defeat it.
Yeah.
And
that whole Jersey drone thing. So the actual establishment of the organization that's going to run it, which was called the Strategic Defense Initiative Organization, under the directorship of James Abrahamson, starts in 1984. And they have a whole bucket list of things that they need to do. They need to coordinate military branches, government agencies, and contractors. Keep in mind, folks, this is a multi-billion-dollar program in the mid-1980s. Ground and space-based lasers to target enemy missiles, X-ray lasers powered by nuclear explosions, particle beams, directed energy weapons for missile destruction. I mean, could you imagine 1984? We were all listening to this going, holy crap, laser beams and particle weapons. And this is something like out of Buck Rogers. Sensor and tracking systems, ground and satellite-based radar, infrared, optical systems to detect, track launches. Now, that work has seriously been applied. The United States has amazing, which is part of the reason why they think they can see these UAPs now. They simply have, so I think that was, and then here's, for Charles, kinetic energy weapons, brilliant pebbles, deploying thousands of small autonomous satellites to intercept enemy missiles. Craig, I don't think we're gonna get dinged for this, but I think of what the hell does he call it? Skynet or whatever. What's Elon Musk's thing?
Starlink.
Starlink. I'm thinking he probably sits like Dexter in his laboratory, and he's probably like, "Oh, Dee, if only I could put a little laser on every one of these little satellites." Make
wouldn't that be something if that was like part of it, like some secretly, each one of those Starlink satellites has something in there to where if it has to be, it can just be because in space, I mean, a tiny object can wreck a satellite, if it gets shot out there, it's just like bullets and like that space. And so, yeah.
So maybe, I don't know.
I mean, because this was when I was growing up. This is one of the first times, like I remember, the rods from God. Was the type of thing where there was this type of thing where we could shoot these things and we could nail them from and that's where you started hearing the talk of like, well, we've got this thing up in space that if it has to, it'll shoot a metal rod and it's going to hit with a kinetic force of like a nuclear bomb, and that's and it's everybody's just, you got all that fear behind it. Right. And I think that was part of what it was. It was not so much whether it's feasible. We got this thing up there, but they're just like, does it work or doesn't it work? What do we do? Do we dare fire the missile to find out? And
So, so they were in charge of computer simulations, limited live tests to assess viability. They were very, very limited, the live tests, funding resources to promising research. And their big PR job was to justify the budget, which was just insane. At a time that the country wasn't doing great. I mean, at the tail end of this program, we went into a recession. I remember because I just graduated from college with a liberal arts degree. So anyway, September 21st, 1987, in the midst of all of this, Reagan addresses the United Nations. And he's talking about war and sort of the ridiculousness of war. And he says, I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world. Now, Charles says that uninhibited talk is an early sign of mental collapse, but a lot of these presidents, is it coincidence that so many of our modern presidents have had firsthand experiences with UAPs? Kind of strange. Okay. 1987 to 91, transition from SDI to the Global Protection Against Limited Strikes. GPALS. What a terrible name. Abramson gives up the leadership, and it's now under the direction of this guy, Henry F. Cooper. Then in 1993, Craig, SDIO is renamed the Ballistic Missile Defense Organization. As you and I have talked about many times with defense contractors and other things, changing names is a good way to break researchers' trails, to make FOIA way more difficult.
Yeah, because once
to hide things, protect yourself from litigation. Oh, that was the old company, but that Monsanto still exists.
oh yeah,
It just got subsumed by
it
Bayer.
just it just changed names, and so now anything that currently happens now isn't covered under the Monsanto
Yeah,
things. Yeah,
yeah,
one before we get too much further, and like we were
yeah.
talking a little bit about the budget through the research, there's not a whole lot of people that they don't really bring this thing up here, but looking at some of these things, I almost have the feeling that this wasn't so much that they like once like we talked about, like they thought that they were going to succeed. This almost felt like a funneling, like a way to launder funds
Hmm.
towards black ops, because
Yeah,
this is because at that time this 1980s, we are still talking, when you're talking $2 to almost $3 billion, but still that's in the grand scheme of like what we're doing now. People are like, oh, 3 billion. I mean, that pretty much gives you a couple of fighter jets now.
wow.
But then that would be something that because people always talk Area 51. How does this get funded? This is how.
Yes,
All
sir.
like I said, all you have to do is fly basically a metal tube up there with a defensive shield logo on it, make it look all thing, and people don't know what's up there. I mean, and it's just pretty much just an empty thing. It could be an empty thing, and meanwhile, Area 51 is fully funded.
Yeah,
Under a Star Wars program.
absolutely. And perfect timing, colleague, because now we're going to get into the sinister mysteries that are
Mhm.
associated with overall billions of US dollars seemingly, and I italicized that in my notes, spent for mostly nothing. I mean, there was great advances in radar, infrared tracking, a lot of that kind of stuff. The actual weaponry, if they have it, it's still kind of secret. I mean, we're certainly not shooting lasers in space to, to break up meteors or anything like
Well,
that.
and that's one of the things is they think this program possibly could have been because there's the what happened in Maui.
Yeah.
The
Oh,
laser
yeah.
weapon. So this
Yeah.
is something where that was through the research. There was people that were posing to the like these are the kind of things that came out of this research. Like this was like the MK Ultra. The
Yeah.
sci-fi version of like MK Ultra. That it created this and spurned this, and then this project was able to develop this laser weapon based off of the funding. And this is where the whole web comes in because I'm pretty
Yeah.
sure DARPA was involved in some of this technology. Coming up with some of the tech
Yeah.
that was associated in the beginning of this program, and
Yeah.
that's
Yeah. Well, we know from the mandate of the organization, the SDIO, that it was government agencies, defense contractors, government agencies had to include DARPA. It had to.
oh yeah,
Um, So, plus there's a mounting body count at the end of this, which really does kind of indicate that there were serious technologies that they wanted to keep secret. So in 2002, and Craig and I have talked about this before, a man named Gary McKinnon, and I believe that he was in Canada, hacked U.S. Space Command. So another precursor of the U.S. Space Force, NASA, and the Pentagon. And it was really shocking because he used basic sort of like off the shelf, readily available hacking tools. He was searching for proof of alien technology
aliens.
and free energy suppression. And what he finds is a UFO cover up by the government. And he finds something that Craig and I have talked about on the show before,
Solar Warden.
Project Solar Warden. That's right. Active since at least 1980. But as I said on my disclosure show, part one, a couple weeks ago, according to a 1985, so Craig, this is the second year of SDI, Reagan writes in his diary that Project Solar Warden may have been authorized by Nixon as early as 1971, which would make
Yeah.
sense when you think about Close Encounters of the Third Kind.
Mhm.
Supposedly, the 12 people in the red suits, there's a lot of encoding in that movie about Project Solar Warden.
Yeah, because I think almost like Independence Day, the movie too, where they kind of talk
Yeah.
about it, like where they're trying to reverse engineer at the bottom of Area 51. And that's what like Nixon, that could have been the thing where it's like they get something, they get a craft, they get aliens, whatever, and they've got them down there and they're studying them. And at that time, he's like, we've got to do this, and they send out they send out the precursors, and then, as usual, how are we going to pay for this?
Right.
Then
Right.
as with anything, it's like that. Somehow, it's like the universal code. You have to speak. At some point, you have to announce what you're doing in order for it to become legit. And I don't know why this is. It's like why every nefarious. It's like every movie, the evil person has got to. This is how you shall die, Mr. Bond, as the laser comes down. I don't know why they have to announce this. Just shoot them with a laser. It's over. And it seems to be everybody. They have to announce what they're doing prior to doing it.
I think it's ritual. Whether they believe in the ritual or not, that's really what I think it is. You have to announce it somehow. So as Craig and I have been asking here, was SDI a smokescreen or a shell project to fund Project Solar Wind, to all kinds of black ops, reverse engineering, all those kinds of things? Nixon's an interesting guy because the lore seems to say that he was read in during the Kennedy years. And don't forget, he supposedly brought Jackie Gleason down to Homestead in the early 1970s, around that time, to see alien bodies recovered from Roswell. So let's get back to Edward Teller. This was Edward Teller's idea. He's the one who brought Reagan out to Lawrence Livermore Laboratory. Well, from the 1950s to the 1960s, he was S4. He was the number 4 slot in Majestic 12, which I've talked about to death on a lot of the Parallels and Pathway shows, so guys. So I'm not going to go into it again. In 1966, Edward Teller in 1966, Edward Teller told the New York Times that the UFO flap centered mostly in Michigan, which gave rise to Hynek swamp gas explanation, were miracles. So this guy obviously was a believer, Craig. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Then it gets even weirder. 2 years later, while at Los Alamos, he's now head of the Atomic Energy Commission. While attending a conference on bridging the technology gap, the lore says that he met with ETs. And this is the guy then who, so a lot of this stuff kind of tracks. Is it all subterfuge? Is it all smokescreen? Is it all Richard Doty? Philip.
It could be because everybody's connected because this, Eisenhower, the supposed, like I said, the missing, he's gone. He's got that missing point where supposedly he's having that meeting. Well, I think it was Valiant Thor, right? That was.
No, Valiant Thor was later. Valiant Thor
later,
was,
okay.
Nixon, yeah.
Nixon, yeah.
But that he met with them at Edwards Air Force Base, absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and so that and this could lead into, because it's there's always been that rumor, the presidential black book, the one where everything's written down. So you could definitely see if Eisenhower had something that said, he would obviously read into Kennedy would read in Nixon. So you would actually have these things. So it would make sense, and then it would be, because everybody said it doesn't matter what president comes in there, they got their big grin, and it's just, you can always see that it's almost like that glassy look in their face after they've been sworn in. They come back because I think they find out the stuff that they did. You don't know what you don't know, and then once you get written, you're like, oh crap. Like I said, and I think that there's probably something to that they realize. It's like, oh, there must be something actually going on, because it's like every president. It's like, look at them, look how fast they gray.
Yeah, well, yeah, that's absolutely it, and so reading in the different guys, and then someone like Carter or Clinton that went way too far got really warned off. So they don't tell them everything. That's the whole thing in Independence Day. Independence Day is one of those movies like Close Encounters where the lore says that for whatever reason, the director Roland Emmerich was really read in. And I think it's we wanted the aliens are bad and we got to increase our defense. I really think that's what that was about. So let's talk about, because we've already gotten to it now, dude. So we can spend the rest of the episode on it. From 1982 to 1988, more than 20 scientists, engineers, so on and so forth, working for the SDI project, many of them who worked for the British defense company GEC Marconi, which is a subsidy of General Electric, one of the major, who anybody know who founded General Electric in the early 1900s? JP Morgan. At the same time that he started US Steel. He started General. It was basically Westinghouse sided with Tesla, and Morgan, of course, famously said to Tesla, "If I can't put a meter on it, I don't want it."
Yeah.
Yeah, so he basically started General Electric. So there's General Electric. So this is GEC Marconi. Now, a few of these more than 20 deaths occurred from 1982 to 1985. The vast majority happened between August 1986 and October 1988. That is exactly the time that the project is transitioning from STI to GPALS. So if there are people, Craig, who know too much, who say too much, who aren't staying put, who are asking for more money, blah, 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 this is a good time to kind of get them off the chessboard, kind of silence them. So I'm going to beg your indulgence, sir. I have most of these, and we can talk about them as we go. We got plenty of time. There are a few that seem very mundane, but when you hear some of these, it's going to make you think of smiley face killers, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Some of these are crazy. Okay, thank you, sir. So, many of these died shortly after they had made some kind of big discovery in their field, or they were about to leave, or had just left GEC Marconi or a parent company or something like that. Now, early on, Victor Moore died of a drug overdose, and he was ruled as a suicide. There's no way with something like a drug overdose that we are going to be able to prove that it was nefarious. Even if the family says, oh, he never took drugs in his life, there's plenty of secret drug users. So I'm gonna kind of put them all out there, and you'll see the ones that raise the brow. March 1982, Dr. Keith Bowden, he was a senior computer scientist, attends a party in London. His car veers off a bridge, hurdles down an embankment, and goes into an abandoned rail yard. Now, again, Craig, we could say, oh, he was at a party, had a little too much to drink, and he went off the road. Okay. 5 of these scientists die of carbon monoxide poisoning in cars or garages. One of them was a Ministry of Defense scientist. 2 were Marconi engineers. 1 was a Ministry of Defense researcher, and 1 was a British aeroscience engineer. So in some of the research I was looking at, someone went and looked at careers where there's a really high suicide rate. None of these careers is one of them. Engineers do not commit suicide. So that's 5 carbon monoxide poisoning. So in 1985, Marconi radar designer Roger Hill dies by a shotgun in his home. So now we have 6 apparent suicides, well, possibly 7. 1985, Jonathan Walsh falls from a hotel window. Reminds me of Forrestal at Bethesda Hospital. He had left GEC Marconi for British Telecom, and in the days prior to his jumping from the hotel window, he was expressing fear for his life. Folks, they just get weirder. August of 1986, Vimal Dajibai, 24-year-old scientist working on computer control systems, jumps from a 331 foot from a suspension bridge into a river. They find him with his pants around his ankles and a needle-sized puncture wound on his buttock. Odd.
Yeah.
Admittedly.
Yes.
1987, January, Richard Pugh, computer expert and consultant to the Ministry of Defense. Get this, dude. He's found in his flat, feet bound, plastic bag on his head, thick rope around his body. That's an awful lot of trouble to go to. Tie your feet up, put a plastic bag on your head, and put a thick rope around your body. The coroner ruled it accident due to sexual misadventure. That old chestnut.
I know that, and there's one right that I think you're going to talk about it in April. Follows it.
Yes, yeah. If you want to take that, if you
no, you go ahead. It's Mark Weisner, but I'll let you go. But it's just because I'd found these 2, and I was just like, this really seems like the Anthony Bourdain thing, where it's just like, I'm pretty sure it just happens to be that 2 guys involved in this suddenly are into a real specific kink that requires asphyxiation.
Yeah. And they think that Anthony Bourdain was going to go public with some pretty heavy stuff.
Oh yeah, but stuff that's going on right now, perhaps.
Yeah. So yes, Mark Wisner, software engineer, also at the Ministry of Defense, found dead with a plastic bag on his head and cling film wrap around his face. Death by sexual misadventure. My feeling, Craig, and I mentioned this to Tanya. If you want the family to not pursue this, if you want this to be dropped, buried, call it sexual misadventure. Call it autoerotic asphyxiation, because there's just nothing more embarrassing.
I'm just gonna come out there and let everybody know this isn't my field of expertise. So bear with me, on this commentary. This is my field of expertise. But I mean, if you're into asphyxiation, I'm like, the bag over the head thing seems like enough. I just don't. The cling wrap around the face multiple times seems like you're going beyond the safe word part, because I mean, you can't say, you can't say hippopotamus at that point. You can't, you can't say the safe word. It's too late. The cling wrap around the face, it just seems to be like, I'm like, come on.
And with autoerotic asphyxiation, right? You're cutting off the blood side to enhance the ending. So you just want to get that stuff off your face like immediately. Why you don't need to go through a plastic bag again, Craig. I'm no expert, right? We're spitballing here, folks. But I do want to bring up a parallel. In 1996, there emerged a man named Philip Schneider. His father, Oscar Schneider, had been involved with the Germans and with the Americans with a lot of high-tech stuff. Phil Schneider was going around lecturing and professing to have been at Dulce Base, that he was an engineer that had worked on the DUMBs. And I know you Three Beards did some shows on the DUMBs, deep underground military bases, DUMBs.
Yes.
And he was supposedly one of the guys who saw the firefight between the Draconians and the Marines and all the crazy stuff at Dulce Base. Within 9 months, he was found dead with surgical tubing knotted around his neck. It's an eerie parallel. And I think, Craig, let's pause right now. Like, if I was an assassin for the KGB, which is a theory that the KGB was knocking off these people, there is a really strange incident that happened where someone lived. CIA, so on and so forth. Why would we do these elaborate things that don't add up and then create a cover-up? It really is a warning that they're untouchable, that they can make this as fantastical as possible, and there's still a coroner who's going to say, sexual misadventure, who's still going to say, oh, this was obviously a suicide.
Oh yeah, two gunshot wounds to the back of the head, and it's ruled a suicide. Oh yeah, I mean, who hasn't tried the suicide, shot themselves once? Oh, that didn't work. Pow, then they finally got it on the second one. It's like, these don't. I mean, I saw Charles's thing. I'm like, that's the thing. I mean, I don't know. I mean, this isn't my line of expertise. I can't tell you that, it's.
Tanya, I think, is here tonight, and I think that something like that, suicide or something like that, for a life insurance policy, once you've had the policy for X amount of time, I think it will pay off regardless. Tanya, if you could answer that for me, but I think that's kind of that. So
I've got some great commentary when we get to Beckham.
Okay, cool. I don't actually have a guy named Beckham. So, do you know when that was?
I'm trying to remember the date. I just saw it. It was Plessy Electronics.
I have it.
But, yeah,
I'm sorry, I have it.
It was because then he was a software engineer. Yeah.
Right. So check this one out. October 1986. Ashad Sharif drives into a public park, ties nylon rope around his neck, a large tree, hits the gas, and decapitates himself.
Yeah, come on.
Who does that?
I know these things. I mean, that was a suicide. No, come on.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah. Charles.
I mean, it's like the one I can't remember what it was. It happened a few years ago, but it was the one where they said that that the person actually tried to cut their own head off.
Yeah.
I'm like, no, there's nobody that's committing suicide that's slowly trying to saw their own head off. I'm like, that's not. There's no way.
And everything is hey, Wallace, how you doing, my friend? Thank you.
Yeah, Tanya said 2 years. Yeah,
2 years. Yeah. So
yep.
So there you go. Yeah, plus you got blood under serious pressure up there. So
Yeah.
you're gonna bleed out before you cut through. I mean, that's ridiculous. But again, folks, I just want to say this. October 1986, Ashan Sharif drives to a public park, ties nylon rope around his neck and a large tree, and drives quickly away, decapitating himself. This is considered suicide. Okay. March of 1987, David Sands, who was a senior scientist, computer controlled radar for Marconi's sister company, drives his car with 10 gallons of fuel in 2 cans in the car into a building after a sudden U-turn. So Craigie's just doing his thing, whips the car around and drives it into a building and incinerates himself because he has 2 5-gallon jerry cans in his car.
Yeah.
Weird.
That's
weird.
no, I was just saying, yeah.
yeah.
I know. No, I was just
go
like,
ahead.
no, I was,
it's bizarre.
I was just
Right.
like,
Here's one of our smiley face killer type things. April 1987, Shani Warren drowns in 18 inches of water. She's gagged. Her hands are bound behind her back. Her feet are tied, and she has a noose around her neck. In 18 inches of water. The police said this: she tied herself up, gagged herself, got to the lake in 4-inch stiletto heels with her feet tied, and then drowned herself. So the coroner here had a little bit of a conscience, and he said, "No, it's not a suicide. It's not a homicide, but I can't say it's a suicide." So they left it open.
yeah,
You gotta be kidding.
yeah, this, I mean, some of these ones, I mean, it's kind of like, it's all tongue in cheek. We know that these guys, you know, that these been paid off and stuff like that. But it's just, what do you think? Anybody that's in police work or something, if you even remotely came out with that thing, they should immediately be, you know, demands for resignations. You know, and the coroner should be fired. Those officers should be fired. Everybody involved in the investigation should not be allowed to do that ever again. Because, come on, you really think somebody's going to tie their ankles, put their hands around there, gag themselves, and then, you know, end up drowning themselves? It's like, come on, there's a way to. This is the thing. It's like, how could anybody, other than somebody that's bought off of stuff, honestly believe this? And the fact that anybody accepted that answer without immediately demanding that is the thing out of all these that just blows my mind. That this was accepted by anybody.
Yeah, and it really is the smiley face killer thing where
Mm-hmm.
they have burn marks. There's fly larvae inside of them that couldn't grow in water yet. They say, oh, they were in water for the 3 weeks that they were missing. All yeah, just crazy. Now I'm trying to be as balanced here to try to make this as impactful as possible. In June of 1987, there's a man named Frank Jennings on the list, a 60-year-old engineer for electronic weapons who dies of a heart attack. 60-year-old guys die of heart attacks.
Yeah,
They do. The only weird thing is the Russians do the injections that make it look like a heart attack. That's kind of why I left it on the list. And also to say that when you look at this list of 20, it's a spectrum of things that make you go, So 4 car crashes into water or barriers. On the same day as one of these car crashes, David Greenhalgh, who's an ICL defense contractor, stopped during his drive to work, got out of his car, and jumped off a bridge. Now, he survived for a few days. And in those few days, he said that he had no idea how he got there or why he was there. That's compelling on some of these. It makes me think of the guy who stopped his car abruptly, did the U-turn, and smashed into a building.
Yeah, it could have been, you know, something was, you know, tire was shot, something like that, you know, that caused them, you know, to suddenly lurch. And in this kind of like the guy you just described, that's like the smiley face killers too, where there's a really good chance drugs, you know, something, you know, drink was spiked, something was spiked like that. They stumble out, they get to this thing and disoriented, you know, and, you know, the attempt to take them out fails, and, you know, and he's able to survive for a long time. And then would make sense where he's like, I have no idea how I got here. Well, that would tell me, there's a pretty good chance, you know, something was slipped into a drink.
Yeah. And do you use drugs to make a suggestion? There's a
Mhm.
couple of really weird ones coming up. And maybe oh yeah. Yeah, Beckham. Exactly. That almost feels, Craig, like a message was sent. Like I think of movies, but anyway, listen to this one. Ministry of Defense researchers. So there were a lot of British Ministry of Defense people involved in this. Avtar Gengida disappears, turns up 4 months later in Paris and has no idea how they got there. That to me says possibly KGB extraction, put them through stuff, get what they need to know, and somehow they escaped or something got screwed up.
Just basically like that whole mental wiping thing, just wipe
Yeah.
everything. He basically tried to get all the information, because you have,
Yeah.
sodium, was it sodium pentothal? Is that what that
The
is?
thought. Yeah. So
Yeah, that's, and you just basically get them to just spill everything.
Yeah.
Their mind just gets basically just, and then
Yeah.
resmount. Like, I have no idea where I'm at.
Yeah. Do you want to share Beckham with the audience that you
Oh, this is the one I said. This is one of the first ones. Like, yeah. So he was out for what most people do. Late Sunday afternoon gardening. You're just what. I've thought many times, like when I'm finished gardening, what would be really refreshing is to go in the garden shed, take my shirt off, attach wires to my nipples, and plug it in after I've gagged myself. I mean, who hasn't done this on a Sunday afternoon?
Yeah.
I started. I mean, it's terrible. The guy died. I feel terrible, but I was laughing. I'm like, dude, this is one. I mean, A for creativity on whoever came up with this one, but the fact of that was the method. I'm like, I mean, what a horrific way to go. I mean, it just is, but it's just the fact electric, it just attached wires to your chest and then just plugged them into the power socket. I mean, that this was once the thing again too, how anybody with a straight face put this on a report and put this out there that was a suicide.
Yeah. Yeah.
I was if it was a suicide, I mean, I could see, when he was holding onto the fork and it stuck it into the socket. Okay. All right. Yeah. Just the attaching of the wires to the chest. I ad-libbed the nipples thing. I'm not sure where that was at. It just made it funnier.
They were attached wires to his chest. That seems like a logical place to put them. Yeah. I don't think it's a stretch. But honestly, isn't this a cold open from Fringe or X-Files?
Yeah.
The guy is in his garden. His wife is sort of in the background in soft focus. She's like, okay.
And all of a sudden the lights go.
Lunch in 10 minutes, Henry. Yeah. Oh, well, yeah. That comes after. Lunch in 10 minutes, Henry. And then he just puts the trowel into the ground, walks to the shed. You kind of see what he's doing. He puts the handkerchief in his mouth. Exactly, Craig. Then they cut to the wife setting out lunch. And the lights go.
Lights just like flicker or blow. Yeah. Oh my God.
Then let's keep going. Opening titles. They come back, and this is what happened. Within hours, the Ministry of Defense is pulling documents and files out of the house.
Out of that. Yep. It's like,
going in the house. Scully or,
yeah. Do you know what's going on here? No, that's his office, and I never go in there.
Yeah. I'm really sorry. I'm really sorry that your husband just died, but we need to get his files out of here right away.
Charles is correct. This one speaks of something like that, a message, and I think
absolutely.
Everybody remembers the movie Taken. The scene that they usually edit out is the one with the knitting with the knitting needles. The guy's sitting in a chair, and he jams the needles into his right above his knees.
Oh.
And he attaches the cables to him. And then it's the wiring, and then he just turns on the power and just starts. I said it's Charles is correct. I mean, that's what, like I said, all humor aside, it's like that's why whoever did it, A, for creativity on the thing, because you can definitely see that there was a message being sent. I mean, because you don't attach. That's not your normal way of going.
No, but here's the weird thing. There's another one. Marconi marketing director John Ferry jammed strip wires into his own tooth fillings and electrocuted himself.
Oh, God, I didn't see that one.
That's two.
That's two. That's immediately like, has anybody ever accidentally bit aluminum foil?
Oh God! Oh, dude! Oh,
that's immediately when you said that. That's immediately the sensation I felt. It's just that.
That is so specific. So. Yeah, like I mentioned, was it the KGB? Was it the CIA? I think it's real. Oh, Joe said I never tried that. What happens? Joe, don't do it. Chewing on aluminum foil just sends little
Oh,
neuro shocks.
yeah, it's
bad.
like it's like an explosion of lightning in your mouth. It's just, oh, I mean, that's going to say, just for the fact that we are not condoning nor encouraging anybody to engage in this risky behavior of chewing on
No.
aluminum foil.
No.
But if you happen to do it, then put it in the comments, why you did it stupidly and what what your opinion is, because oof. Yeah.
Oh, touch a 9-volt battery with your tongue. Now,
That's pretty close.
I'm the guy who checks to see if a 9-volt battery still works by touching it to his tongue. So
Oh, there you go.
I also don't recommend that, guys.
Yeah.
Just plug it in and see if it lights out. No, but when Tanya and I were in the field, we would burn through typical paranormal investigation. You just burn through batteries in the spirit boxes and everything. And I'm pulling out a battery. I got a bag full of batteries in my gig bag, and we got 20-25 people in this open investigation. I'm just whipping out batteries. And I will also tell you this too: if you take a 9-volt battery and you put it in your pocket with car keys, that battery will heat up. That happened to me in the web one night. All of a sudden, my pocket started burning. I was like, "What the hell?" And I
made
pulled
the
out
connection.
the keys of yeah, it did. It made a connection. So pretty crazy. So this may be our Joe had that happen. You gotta be careful. Yeah, coins. Right. Yeah, 9-volt batteries, little devils.
Yeah, it's like I'm in the trash industry, and that's one of the things that causes fires all the time is people throwing batteries.
Oh, because it
makes contact with something metallic inside the truck, and so all of a sudden you'll see smoke. And so that we've had sometimes where we have to pop the back up and just push the whole load out because it starts to catch on fire. And so so batteries.
So what do you suggest? Wrap them in a paper towel?
Well, it's a lot of times is there's a lot of areas they have battery recycling. That's what you're supposed to do to keep it. But a lot of times, if you wrap something around it to where it won't make contact, then that prevents it. But that's one of the things. Like throw it even at home. If you throw it in your trash, if you have something metallic, like a metal can or something, it could even do it inside your house. So you got to be really careful with those.
Folks, we try to be helpful on many levels here, but I think we're going to end a little early tonight, which is okay. People go do some stuff, but that was the strategic defense initiative. Next week, Craig, we are doing the pagan Krampus. Dark origins of Santa Claus and Christmas. So we got some cool things, Krampus, and some really weird, odd. I think I have some pretty little known stuff. Craig, I'll probably send you the list of the 4 or 5 I'm working on. Okay. Sunday.
Well,
I'll send them to you on Sunday. There's some really strange European tradition. There's Black Peter, and there's some other cool stuff. So that'll be a fun one, guys.
Yeah, the darker side of the Christmas traditions is pretty much what it is. The sinister side. Yeah, because obviously sinister mysteries. No, right. I think like my parting thoughts on this one is, I honestly feel like this was more pressuring because we really didn't touch on too much of it. I mean, this is what led to the infamous, Gorbachev coming out and basically shutting down the USSR, is because they, like you alluded earlier, they bankrupt. They went bankrupt. They couldn't spend. At this time, the U.S.'s economy was like this, and Russia, it's like it was the reverse X. And once they crossed that part, Russia, Soviet Union could not keep up, and it was just a matter of time. And in a way, that's through my research. That's what I almost feel like this was. That this was a shell game. It funded the projects that needed to be funded under the guise of nobody's going to really look into it because we're doing it to beat the Russians.
Yeah,
we're doing it to beat the Soviets. So nobody's going to really care about the wizard behind the screen pulling up. Nobody's going to care about that because we're beating the Soviets. And it's just one of those. So all these black ops stuff, all the stuff's getting funded, Solar Ward and everything. And it's like, I think it was to give people on the ground, some relief of now, our government is doing something to make sure that those Soviet bombs aren't going to land, in middle America. We don't have to worry about those missiles, and this was done. It was like a multi-pronged thing. It was kind of served multiple purposes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I don't, like I said, just like anything, none of us really know truly if it worked, if it didn't work, because that's, it's just like anything. It's like nobody knows what that secret spacecraft's for. Is it
Right.
scientific research? Is it a future generation? But nobody knows. We know there's a plane. We just don't know what it does. We don't know what's inside. No, nobody. It's all speculation. It's the same way with this initiative. We know what the goal was. We just don't know what everything that was done with it. No, I mean, lots of speculation, but anybody that truly knows is either has, wires attached to their nipples, or they're still not talking.
Yeah. Or, because it bears saying one more time, tie a rope around your neck, tie a rope around a tree, and then hit the gas pedal.
Yeah. It's one of those.
Come on.
Yeah, just like you said, go through that list. How anybody could stake their career on that's the report. I mean, it had to come down to they had gambling debts that needed to be wiped out, and that's why we need you, Mr. Coroner, to sign off on this suicide.
Yeah. I mean, we see it all the time. We saw it with smiley face killers, and no matter where you stand on the guy who choked out the guy on the subway, there was a real difference of opinion between the person who performed the autopsy and what the medical expert said in court. It was night and day. So that's a very recent example,
which is crazy. And it's
how things get brought to bear and pressures. And
well, we got just a couple minutes. I mean, don't know. Do you want to touch on what's going on in New Jersey? Like your thoughts?
I will tell you. Yeah, no, I just want to say this. I'm real connected with people in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, and it's not really making the news the way New Jersey is, but very, very similar things have been filmed in over Point Pleasant, in that area of Western, Ohio, West Virginia, around the same time. And plus it's Pennsylvania. It's also into New York. The Arsenal proximity and Trump's Bedminster golf course were interesting.
Mm-hmm.
And then I guess the only other thing I want to say before I turn it over to you is the FBI was investigating. I saw there's just so much trash in the system anymore, right? Banyan said flood the field with shit, and the field is just like with Luigi Mangione and all of it. But someone said that a dirty bomb has been smuggled into the United States, and these are drones that are looking for signatures. Have you seen that one?
I have not seen that one. I mean, do I think there's a great chance? I mean, when you have millions of crossing borders without knowing who it is, I mean, it's like that's been one of the biggest things. It's like it has nothing to do with the humanity side. It simply comes down to, if you don't know who's coming across. I mean, there's Pakistani, Afghan, just you go down the thing. There's all these people, Yemen. There's all these people from these countries. And it's just, you're like, the chances of everybody being an innocent person that's just looking to better their life is, I mean, I'm glad you have that kind of optimism. I go, all it takes is one. If one person smoke, and that's, that's that soapbox on the thing. Yeah. But that's, for me, I think the biggest thing too, you can see the FBI because people are calling in saying there's strange lights in the sky. You can see them doing it. But the thing I want to know is the New Jersey, they didn't come to the New Jersey Senate and House and present the stuff. They made them come to them.
Yeah.
To see it,
DHS.
which is really weird. And the part that I think, it's just like with the Chinese, that balloon that floated across the US. Why are we not shooting these things down?
Right.
Why are there not
surrounding them or something?
Yeah, there's drones up there. There's these mysterious objects in the sky. Why are no jets scrambled?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's following a Coast Guard ship. It's following Navy. Why are, at that point, why aren't defensive measures being, applied? Yeah. And that's the part that's, it's really, that's, for me, so far, that's the biggest mystery right now. Which one, the only thing I come from that is, it's us. The reason that it's not is that there's a good chance that this is it goes to like DARPA. There's something out here. They know what it is, but they're just kind of, they're better to let the minds wander and do all the speculation.
and they're controlling the narrative, which leads me to believe it. One thing it definitely isn't is UAP. It's not UAP. It's
Yeah,
not
I mean,
UAP.
it's not an Iranian mothership that's launching drones. I've seen that one. I'm like, does anybody really think Iran has the budget, has the wherewithal to create, a black, you know, cloaking type mothership that could float all the way, that could sail all the way to the U.S. undetected and then launch drones
Yeah.
repeatedly over a thing without being detected? No.
No. And but that originated with a New Jersey politician in
Mhm.
the New Jersey legislature, and now Kirby came out just hours ago, finally, right? Defense spokesperson, and says, no, it's not any offshore ships. It's not this, it's not that. They're not saying what it is, but when a narrative comes out that starts to get hold, I notice
Yep.
they bring someone out who can counter the narrative. It could be that they're just testing, like, I want to look into that Picatinny, I think it's called Picatinny Arsenal.
Yeah, that's because
Um,
that's one thing I've heard that I actually heard that today too. There somebody was talking about that's a really important location, and that's one of this. That's part of the reason why both the Senate and the House Assemblies wanted to get this thing, is because that's one of those things that's really important to the state, is this thing too.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I'm just curious, like everybody when saying, but
Yeah.
it's mysterious because the locations seem to be kind of random, but at the same time, it's just one of those, why there has not been any response, just like the balloon. The balloon one, I kind of get a little bit, because there was one of the rumors was they were afraid that there was like a biological aspect, that if
Sure.
it got shot down, it would land, and it might have been like a Trojan horse thing, where that was the thing. If you shoot it down, what might happen, that it might be that same type of thing. But I don't know. It just seems really weird that there was nothing scrambled to intercept
No.
or inspect it. I mean, just nothing. No helicopter. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
It's weird.
I'm going to throw one more thing out there that, correlation, causation kind of thing. Just a couple weeks ago, we had another round of House hearings about disclosure.
Yep.
This is a good way to muddy the waters, to make people look stupid, to just come out and go, oh, all this stuff that people are filming. It's interesting that it's in Point Pleasant, West Virginia, because there were the UFOs over that town back in 66, 67, and it happened to be November. It happened to be that time of year that the Mothman was first seen, the MIBs, kind of a specialty of mine, if you will. So that's interesting too. I wonder, but Craig, we just spent, actually, this isn't that far afield, because we just spent tonight talking about these big government or deep state or whatever programs check multiple boxes. That's the nature of them.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So this could be many, many things.
Yeah, this could be, like I said, could be a test to see, how these things work, what they do, see how people's reaction to them. I mean, there's a lot of people like now. I mean, you take 40, 50 years ago, people would be freaking out. There's lights in the sky. Now, a lot of people are just like, maybe this is what Cliff High was talking about. Maybe now we got the aliens. He was just wrong on the date.
That whole thing was just nutty. But let's
why I did that
follow up
post
on this next week. You know what I mean? I know. You got a lot of traffic on that. That was great. Yeah, that was very strange. That was very strange on December 3rd. So, let's follow up on this next week while we're talking about the dark origins of Santa Claus.
Yeah, see if something comes of it.
Thank you, everyone. I did a good job on the intro. Let's see if I can do a good job on the outro. Thank you, guys. Two things. Thank you for all the great feedback on the new intro and outro. And B, if anybody can figure out why the hell YouTube has flagged our intro as 18 and only because it has images of violence, please let us know.
I can only think it's just, maybe it's the Kennedy assassination film in the front. But I am on intentionally, when I did it, took out the headshot.
Yeah.
Because I knew that would be a flag. So I just got it right after the initial one where he just kind of slumped. But yeah, you don't ever see anything. So I don't know. Maybe that's the only thing I can think. Because I mean, it can't be
Either
the
that
nuclear
or the-
explosion.
Yeah, no. So, but anyway, so you have to log in, you have to show your creds in order to watch it. But actually, it's been watched by a bunch of people, maybe for that reason. They're like,
Yeah.
oh, what are those two guys up to? That it's 18 and only.
I know.
So,
We got to do one of those clickbait ones. Watch our intro to see why it's being flagged by YouTube, and suddenly, we'll get a few more views that way. I
Sinister
know.
Mysteries.
I am.
Sinister Mysteries has been shut down due to sexual misadventure.
I know. God.
Oh, sorry. I know. That's going to
I
get
know.
us
We're
sued.
going to get somebody protesting us because we're against their kink.
All right. We'll see you guys next week. We'll be back. Thanks for staying
All right.
with us.
Stay mis-
Do you have a sinister mystery in mind? Let us know by sending us a DM or comment in the chat. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell. Till next time, stay mysterious.